Hello, and welcome to today's Channel Expert Hour webcast. I'm Jessica Davis, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. And we've got a really interesting topic today. Tired of VPN and FTP? How to make the file server more accessible for clients. Today's webcast is sponsored by eFolder, and we've got some excellent information on the way from some great speakers. But first, let's get some housekeeping items out of the way. Let's go over how your web console works first. I invite you to get social. You can click on your Twitter widget to tweet information out to your followers. You can also resize your windows in your console and adjust your volume as well. And you can move around those windows as well and customize your console. And if you run into any problems during the webcast, you can hit the magic F5 key, and that will reload your console if you run into any problems with advancing slides or audio issues. You can hit the magic F5 button, and that will reset everything. And with that, let's get on to today's topic. Tired of VPN and FTP? How to make the file server more accessible for clients. Again, I'm your host, Jessica Davis. I'm Editor-in-Chief of MSP Mentor and a Content Director with Penton Technology. And what we'll cover today: why your clients are tired of VPN and FTP, how to make the file server more accessible for your clients, and we're going to look at some really interesting case studies from an MSP and eFolder partner named Wooden Spoon Technologies. Plus, of course, as always, we'll have your questions throughout the webcast. And I'd like to welcome Ted Hulsy, VP of Marketing from eFolder. Welcome, Ted.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Jessica.
And Zach Mesel. Did I say your last name right, Zach?
It's Mesel.
Mesel. So sorry. President and CEO of Wooden Spoon Technologies. Thanks for joining us today, Zach.
Thanks so much for inviting me to speak.
And I'm hoping, Zach, you can take us through a little bit of background about Wooden Spoon Technologies. Tell us about your company.
Sure. As the slide says, you can see there, we've been in business for about 12 years. We've got quite a number of clients. I would say probably about 20% of them are under managed contract for full management and a smaller degree for a la carte services. We're about 50 miles north of San Francisco, and most of our clients are close by, although we do have some outliers south of the Bay Area, and also get some clients that have remote offices in other parts of California and in Colorado. And we don't do any vertical specialization at this point, so we've got clients that are across a number of different sectors, so a wide variety of clients.
Excellent. I think we're going to be hearing about some of those clients later on in the webcast, so I'm excited about that. Thank you, Zach. And
Sure.
Before we get on to the meat of today's discussion, I just wanted to run this polling question with our audience. So I'm going to read out the question and the answers, and while I do that, I want you to take a look and mark your answer here. And the question is, what percentage of your clients store their files on an internal file server? Is it 0 to 25%? 26 to 50%, 51 to 75%, or 76 to 100%. Let me read that through one more time. What percentage of your clients store their files on an internal file server? 0 to 25%, 26 to 50%, 51 to 75%, or 76 to 100%. Okay, and we have some answers here. Okay. That's the sweet spot here is 76 to 100% of clients store their files on an internal file server. That seems very big to me. Any thoughts on this, Ted?
Well, I think it's, I think probably the topic of today's webinar is, caught the right folks' attention. The file servers, as we're going to talk about in the next couple of minutes, are still critical collaboration resources and file control resources for most small businesses. So I think what we're trying to really address with today's webinar is to describe how to make the file server accessible and available in a mobile world. That's really the big challenge, I think, today, and the meat of what we're going to discuss. Absolutely,
absolutely. And I have, asked me about my file server experience at various companies I've worked for, and my answer is no comment. So moving on, so Ted, can you take us through this slide? Why is the file server still a mainstay in many offices?
Well, I think the file server is still a mainstay because in most cases it works. I think the purpose of a file server, as everybody knows, is to have a centralized repository for all the critical file and content data in a business. It's usually on a high-speed local area network. The headquarters staff is empowered there at the main office to access all the files. And when things are set up correctly with a good secure remote access solution, things usually work well. The challenges come in is that it often doesn't work as advertised. The challenges that crop up is, number one, we're in a much more mobile world these days. Companies of all sizes are becoming much more distributed. You've got lots of employees who are laptop-carrying professionals out in the field working from home offices. Companies, to save on real estate costs or to serve their clients or partners better, are distributing their employees in a more geographically broad fashion, even small businesses. And what ends up happening is if you don't have the right VPN technology or secure remote access in place, or if the users are poorly trained, or if the system isn't properly configured, what ends up happening is collaboration collapses. The file server will be a repository for folks that are at the headquarters location, but remote employees will start to collect critical business content on their remote laptops and not VPN into the headquarters. And so you end up with remote computing devices with tons of critical business information that's probably needed by all colleagues, whether they're at headquarters or remote, and the data becomes siloed. And when data gets siloed, levels of collaboration decline dramatically. And so the real power of the file server gets dramatically reduced. And so, a picture tells 1,000 words. If you kind of look at the situation today, in many, probably for the vast majority of you who are on the call today, the way your clients, remote employees, get to the file servers, they probably VPN into some sort of security appliance or VPN concentrator to get remote access into the file server. When it's configured correctly, everything goes extremely well. When things are broken, or it's not properly supported, or people aren't well trained, problems explode, and people get very frustrated. I think when you just simply go out there and ask any old user, you say, how much do you love your VPN? People's eyes will roll. It's been a big problem. And so secure remote access, it's never been that easy, and there is a better way. With the proliferation of mobile devices, bring your own device phenomenon, the power of tablets and smartphones to empower on-the-go business professionals, it's not only an issue of we not only have a situation where the companies are becoming more distributed, the range of devices that employees use to compute on is increasing as well. And so we really have this huge challenge, which is how do I keep everybody in sync? How do I continue to use the existing legacy file server? And how do I support all of the remote users and and allow them to collaborate on content on their mobile devices as well, in addition to their laptop computer. And the answer is, eFolder's answer with our Anchor service is a key feature that we call file server enablement. And what file server enablement allows you to do is, when a partner has deployed the eFolder Anchor file sync solution to a client, you're able to cloud connect the file server to the Anchor service. So all of the content on the file server gets synced in real time to the cloud, and then the directories on the file server can be mapped to team shares, where you've got different groups of users who need to collaborate on different segments of the content on the file server, and then all of that content then will get synced to the remote users, and vice versa. I mean, as we mentioned earlier, the big challenge has historically been remote users are creating all this great content, and oftentimes headquarters personnel need access to those files as well. And so you want to make sure your remote users are not having to think about syncing their content back to the file server. You just want it to happen. You just want them to save a document into a team share and have that dynamically synced right back to the file server. And that's how the file server enablement feature works in eFolder's Anchor solution. Just to quickly take a step back, or take one step up, let me just kind of make sure everybody has a level set. When we talk about the Anchor service, what is it? The eFolder Anchor service is a file sync and collaboration solution that is designed for managed service providers to be deployed to your small, medium business clients. What's unique about Anchor is that it was built from the ground up for managed service providers. So it has a whole range of different features and capability that make it, extremely easy, powerful, and profitable for MSPs to deploy this to your clients. And so on the slide you have depicted in front of you, just to quickly go through this, one of the fundamental premises of Anchor is that it's multi-tenant. So you've got client A depicted and client B depicted. And client A and client B will, in most cases, in most deployments, have dramatically different security requirements. Client A may not have a file server, but client B may have a file server, as an example. And so one of the foundational capabilities of the Anchor service is that it's multi-tenant, and it allows an MSP to deploy the service out to different clients and have different security policies, different configuration parameters, and to be able to globally manage what would otherwise be a very complex scenario in an easy manner. The biggest challenge that all MSPs face, really, ultimately at the end of the day, is how do you control labor costs with a growing client base, and how do you keep your profits up? And you do that with automation, you do that with technologies that are streamlined into your business, and multi-tenancy is a foundational capability. From a user perspective, Anchor, as we've kind of mentioned in the file server context, syncs data between users' mobile devices and the cloud, and syncs data between internal employee collaborators on team shares. It also has the capability, as we looked at a guest user on the left, it gives the ability of a licensed user to share content with external third parties in a range of different methodologies. You can send a public share link to a large piece of content, say a large presentation or a large video file as an example, or you're able to do secure collaboration where you send something that's highly confidential, and instead of attaching that confidential file to an email, the confidential file gets synced to the cloud, and then the licensed user can intelligently share that out with a secure share, what we call a secure share. So there's a range of different sharing capabilities where files can be shared with external third parties that is really needed in a host of different business scenarios. All of the data gets synced to the eFolder cloud, and then MSPs are able to manage the whole installation from a global single pane of glass for the solution. So before I turn the floor over to Zach to talk about some real-life case studies, let's just make one more comment about file server enablement. I mean, the way it basically works is after you've deployed the file sync agent to the file server and then to all of your other employee users and to their mobile devices, you would map folders or directories on the file server to team shares. And then all of the content between those folders and the team shares stay in sync, and we have a much better scenario where we're fully leveraging the power of the file server for the folks in the office, and we're fully empowering everybody who's remote and on the go, on their laptop computer or on their mobile devices. So with that, let me turn the floor over to Zach to talk about some real-life case studies from Wooden Spoon's client base.
And Ted, if you don't mind, before we actually turn this over to Zach, I have a couple questions coming in from the audience here that I wanted to quickly ask you. And one of them was from Keith, who wants you to comment on the performance aspects of on-premise file servers versus cloud data and cloud file servers. Can you talk a little bit about that? Are you seeing anything? Are you seeing big performance differences there?
Well, you can put the file server anywhere you want, really. I mean, I'll tell you kind of what we see is, you know, in the vast majority of cases, the file servers are on premises at the clients today. You have other clients where maybe the bulk of the server infrastructure of the client's been moved to a hosted environment in the cloud. That's fairly common as well. And then the other thing we see is sometimes for smaller clients who maybe have an old file server, an old server, say a Windows 2003 server that's been decommissioned because it's long in the tooth, sometimes Anchor will serve as a substitute for the file server, or even as a migration tool to eliminate the file server. So for a lot of small clients, the traditional benefits and needs of a file server can be met by just using a service like Anchor instead of the file server. Our goal as a company is to really meet all of these unique deployment requirements of MSPs. You've got plenty of clients where the file server's serving a function well, it's on good hardware, it's properly backed up with backup and BDR technology, everything's hunky-dory, there's no reason to rip it out. If you talk to the folks at Dropbox, they say, "Oh, rip out your file servers." That's a terrible. I mean, rip and replace and forklift upgrades are often not in the interest of your clients, and so you know the file server will be high performance on a local area network. It'll be high performance if you've got secure remote access, but it will be really seamless if you use a sync technology like eFolder's Anchor service with file server enablement.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Ted. That's so helpful. And now I want to turn it over to Zach. He's going to take us through some really interesting case studies. He has a lot of interesting clients, it looks like, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we're starting out with an architecture firm. Zach, can you take us through? Yeah.
Absolutely. And hopefully this will be helpful in terms of answering some of the questions about, you know, how the product is used and what the performance characteristics are, because I get it. You know, before we started using Anchor, you know, we faced a number of different problems, and let's just kind of dive right in. So if we have an architecture firm, and this was they came to us as a new client. They were in a situation where they had a file server. Another company had come to them and said, "Oh, let's do a complete, let's rip this," exactly like you're talking about, Ted, a rip and replace, ripping out their file server, and they had promised them that the synchronization technology was going to work really, really well for them, and it flat out, it just didn't. And their situation is that they've got an office here in Santa Rosa. They've probably got 7 people here. And then in a remote town in Northern California, they've got one of their architects. So they needed to be able to share CAD drawings. So these are, you know, it's not just Word documents or Excel documents, Excel spreadsheets. These are pretty sizable files. And the way that they were doing it was via VPN. The remote user would VPN in. He would access the files from the file share directly over the VPN, so that can be a little bit slow. You know, the remote user actually had a pretty slow DSL connection, had a pretty fast DSL pipe at the office, But nonetheless, when you're loading a large CAD file, that can take some time when you're doing that over the VPN. And so it was okay, but it really wasn't ideal, and they were definitely having problems with that VPN connection, with the stability of the connection. So they had this other company come in, make them huge promises. It totally fell flat on its face. And when we came in, we kind of had to re-educate them and say, look, you know, it sounded to us like what they really needed was to keep their file server on site, but they needed a better way of providing file sync to their remote user. And so what we did, we actually put a brand new Windows file server back in. They were very happy with. And then we took certain portions of their file system and replicated them to the cloud. And so let me be clear about something. You don't need to, you can pick and choose the folders that you want to sync to the cloud. There's, you know, it is not as simple as necessarily saying I want that folder, and that folder, but it's very, very simple to group folders together, synchronize them to the cloud, and make them available to remote users. And that's exactly what we did. So now what happens is when the remote user goes to open a CAD file, from their standpoint, that's a file that's living locally on their machine. So they're getting local performance of that file. It's not like they click on the file and they have to wait a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes to open. Some of these CAD files are big. They can be, you know, in the tens of megs or even over 100 megs. So these are sizable files. They're already local. They make their, you know, they do their work. They save their changes, and then those files are synced in the background back to the file server at the office. So I do want to address a possible question in advance, which is, okay, what happens when somebody at the office wants to see the changes that the remote user made? And frankly, they've got to wait for that file to sync. But because Anchor, in my opinion, Anchor is better at doing that file synchronization than the VPN is, it's actually much more stable, and the synchronization in our experience happens more reliably and more quickly. So it ends up working pretty well. All right.
Excellent. Should we move on to the next one? Okay.
Sure. So this client is a land surveying company. They've got about 20 people here in Santa Rosa. The owner is on a tear. He is started the process of buying up other land surveying companies, and he recently bought one in Santa Cruz, which I said before, it's about 3 hours from here. And in this particular situation, we've done something a little bit, this is a little bit unusual, but it seems to be working temporarily. This is an intermediate step. I don't know how long we're going to continue to do this, but the idea is he's got engineers in Santa Rosa that need access to the Santa Cruz data, and engineers in Santa Cruz who potentially need access to the Santa Rosa data because they want to see how things are done. And our idea was initially that we were going to synchronize the Santa Cruz server back to Santa Rosa, but we ended up kind of doing it both ways. And what that allows us to do is it enables engineers in both sites to be able to see the data on either site. Like I say, this is an interim solution. What we're going to end up having is a centralized file server and then syncing down to the individual locations. So this was a kind of a stopgap measure, but it enabled us to do something very creative in a short amount of time and satisfy a need, especially for a business owner who is moving very, very quickly and wanted a way to be able to provide this information to people in multiple geographies very quickly. So without Anchor, it just would have been a much more difficult and much more time-consuming process to deal with. So
okay.
I think that is it on that particular client.
Sounds good. And then you have a construction company as well.
Exactly. And this construction company, again, based here in Santa Rosa, and the challenge here is this is actually at their main office. They don't have a Windows server, and they're basically doing peer-to-peer file share. They've got one machine at the office that is sharing data with other machines at the office. and they really weren't interested, for a variety of different reasons, they weren't interested in purchasing a full-blown server. And so that has some challenges for IT companies, and I would assume that there are people in the audience who are facing similar kinds of situations. So the key here is you can use file server enablement without actually having a file server. You can actually set up the functionality on any Windows PC. So in this particular case, we've got a Windows 7 workstation at the office. We set up file server enablement. We basically have the files organized by, I think we have it as there's an administrative share, there's a project share, and then I think there's another one that is just for the two owners. And we created individual anchor file shares for each of those folders. So what that allows us to do is when we have estimators in the field or project managers in the field, they're on laptops, and we sync for example, with the project managers, we only sync the projects folder to their laptop. And as long as they've got an internet connection, they've got the most recent data, they can update files in the field, and those are synced back to the main office either in real time if they're connected or the next time they connect to the internet. And for them, that ended up working out great. So they've got that ability for the remote users to access the data. They did not have to purchase a Windows server, which they were happy about. From our standpoint, I'll be honest with you, it would be easier for us to administer them if they had a file server, but it gives us flexibility to deal with some of the smaller clients that are great clients, low PITA factor, but they don't want to buy a server, and enables us to stay engaged with them.
Right. Excellent.
Okay. Let's go to the next case. Oh, yes. This is
medical
fun.
Client here. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a client. This is an oral surgery practice where the doc. So this, in addition to having file synchronization issues or file management issues, understand they've also got HIPAA issues. And that is, it's something that we're forced to deal with as an IT company, and it definitely presents some challenges for us to recommend a solution that's going to provide the appropriate level of protection for the client and their patients. So in this particular example, the surgeon was keeping, he uses a program called Anatomage, which basically is a program that provides a 3D model. Given a CT scan, it gives him a 3D model with which he can plan out, for example, implants, an implant treatment plan for his clients. These are oral implants, not any other kind of implants. And so he creates these files. Again, these files, I think a small file is somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 meg. And he was using SneakerNet. He was using either an external hard drive or a USB memory stick to transfer these files to his laptop, either with his laptop right there or with his laptop at home, and he's carrying these portable media devices with him between his office and his home. And obviously problematic for a number of different reasons. So what we encouraged him to do is use Anchor File Sync and set it up with the highest level of encryption, actually encrypting the data on the Anchor server so it's protected, it's completely encrypted and non-visible to anybody but him on the Anchor server. And then we synchronize that data automatically between his desktop PC and his laptop. Now, before we get other questions about this, or you guys are thinking in your mind, wait a second, you got HIPAA issues and there's no server. We're actually in the process of installing a server, and so this diagram will change, and rather than syncing from a workstation to his laptop, it'll actually sync from a Windows server to his laptop, and we'll have an even greater degree of control. But nonetheless, this idea of using SneakerNet, any kind of portable media, especially where data that's subject to compliance rules, whether it's HIPAA compliance or other kinds of regulatory compliance, really bad idea, really bad idea. And Anchor gives us a way to deal with that in a very elegant way and in a very secure way that protects the client. So we're very happy about that.
Very good, very good. And Zach, I hope you don't mind me interrupting you here, but I've had a number of questions coming in about conflict resolutions between files and how it works in these solutions. And I'm wondering if you could take a minute to answer that for people.
Sure. Let me talk about my experience, and Ted, if you'd like to jump in here as well as I go through, by all means. But that is something that you've got to keep in mind, and Anchor deals with that in what we have found to be a very viable way. So what you can do is you can tell Anchor when you create a team share, you can tell Anchor, hey, by default, if somebody opens this file, I actually want you to lock this file for read-write access for other users at other sites. And that is absolutely, it's a big deal. So for example, going back to the first case study with the architecture firm, they're using CAD files, and that was an issue with them. And when you get into a situation where you have a conflict, which is, right, you have two people update the same file in the same period of time, in the same window of time, Anchor will not overwrite, as I recall, it won't overwrite the file. It will notify you that there's a conflict, and then at that point you've got to resolve the conflict. And once you're in a conflict situation, you're really left with having to figure out what the differences are between the files. So my recommendation is avoid the conflict by using file locking. Or if you don't want to use the automatic file locking, then you're going to have communication between the people at the site. But what the automatic file locking does is when you open a file, it will actually prompt you, hey, do you want to lock this file so that other people know that they shouldn't update it right now? And in some cases, if you're opening a file for read-only, you're going to say, no, I don't care. And in other cases where you're about to make updates, you'll say, yeah, lock the file. And then the other person's going to get a notification, and they'll see if they try to open it that file's locked, and they should wait. And then that usually what we have found is that prompts communication between the two sites, and they figure out, hey, can you finish up what you're doing because I need to make updates to the file. It's pretty simple. And even in that situation where a conflict is created, resolving the conflict is pretty easy.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Zach. And one more quick question for you around a similar issue. Synchronization, does it happen in real time, or what's the interval? It does occur in real time, and so there are a couple of things that you can do, a couple of environmental factors that affect it, a couple of factors that you can options that you can modify that will affect it. So obviously, big thing that affects it is the speed of the internet connection. Both at the local or at the file server and at the remote site. And then the second thing is you can also, if you don't want Anchor to chew up all your available bandwidth, there are options within the Anchor client to tell it, hey, limit your bandwidth usage to whatever you want to set it to. So, but the synchronization itself, once it detects that there's a difference between a local file and the file in the cloud, yeah, it will begin that sync right away. Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Zach. And now I'm going to let you talk about the next case study here, client case study, the Winery. Right.
So we've done a couple of things with them. It was interesting. This is actually a long-time client, and they've got most of their employees at the winery itself, but they've also got a national sales force, so they've got a couple of folks that are either full-time road warriors and based in different geographies, or they've got people that are based at the winery and will do occasional trips. But the thing that really sparked what happened here was we had a remote employee that had a hard drive on a laptop crash, and the data on their laptop in their local folders, their My Docs folder and whatnot, was not backed up, and they lost some data. And that always causes some gnashing of teeth.
Yeah.
And so what we actually decided to do for them, we did two different things. We're using the Anchor client in two different ways. In one way, we're using it to sync files from the file server to the laptop, but we're also using a capability in the Anchor client that actually lets us back up files. So we can synchronize files from the laptop back to the winery site, but we can also tell Anchor Backup, hey, run on a daily basis, and it chooses its schedule. We can't choose its schedule, but it doesn't. Our understanding is it doesn't run necessarily in real time like the synchronization piece of Anchor, but you can tell it, hey, back up anything that's on their desktop, anything that's in their My Docs. If you want to back up their music, their photos, their favorites, you can tell it what to do, and it will back those up. Now, it's not using the file server enablement functionality to do that. It's actually using Anchor Backup functionality to do that, and it's pushing it to the Anchor cloud and not back to the file server at the winery. But what that allows us to do is make sure that those laptops have data, and again, this is simple data, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint presentations. Make sure that kind of data, which for whatever reason, and I know that you guys are probably going to find this hard to believe, that salespeople don't always follow the directions of the IT department and put files where they're supposed to put them.
No.
This enables us to make sure to capture those files, even if they don't put those files back in the TeamShare folder that gets automatically synced. So this solved a problem for us in a number of different ways. And Ted, if you want, we can talk about the difference between the Anchor backup and eFolder backup if there happen to be questions about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to make a comment that it's not something I touched on earlier, is that the file level backup capability in the product is included in standard, and I think the use case you've described is an excellent one. It's most of the time our big challenge everyone's dealing with today is collaboration. How do you keep content in sync between remotely geographically dispersed employees and make sure everyone's staying, having high levels of collaboration and productivity across a range of different computing devices. But as you noted, file level backup on laptops is still a huge problem, and oftentimes many of the staff, like field salespeople, they don't necessarily see the wisdom in the instructions they've been given around, backing up and that sort of thing. So you want to make it highly automated and effortless. They shouldn't have to lift a finger, and it should just work in the background. And the file level backup capability in Anchor does that. So you can pick all of the different files and folders on the machine, and then in the background dynamically, all of that data will get backed up to the eFolder cloud seamlessly. So syncing certain files for collaboration reasons, and then backing up everything, because if that laptop gets stolen, lost, destroyed, you name it, you want that data protected.
Makes sense. And certainly that person who lost the data on their laptop, this would have resolved that problem. It would have been backed up and could have been recovered.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Excellent.
So that was one other quick point I want to make before we move on, and this is something that has been extremely helpful, is that Anchor will save the number of revisions, either number of revisions or for a period of time, both revised documents and deleted documents, which makes it very, very easy for users to recover documents that they might have accidentally deleted and even do that without the help of their IT department. So once you show the user how to get that information back, that can be a big time saver for, well, I'll tell you, it's been a time saver for us.
I bet. I know when I lose files, I'd much rather try to recover them myself than involve the IT department. So that's got to be a big time saver for you as well. Let's see. So moving on, looking at all these different clients that you brought this solution to, can you take us through this slide, Zach, and give us the high level here?
Yeah, let's go one forward there. So I guess the idea here is not only can you use Anchor as a value proposition when you're trying to attract new clients, like we did with the architectural firm. And oh, by the way, that was a tough sell because they had, the IT company they were working with previously had basically, they were attempting to sell them a similar solution. The only problem was that solution wasn't mature and didn't work. And so I will tell you, this client they had extremely high expectations and they were extremely leery. And we were absolutely able to deliver with Anchor. And it was one of the things that got us a new client. In the other situations, these were existing clients. And interestingly, with the land surveying company, we had already bundled Anchor functionality into the cost of their monthly support plan. So when they came to us and said, hey, we have this problem that we're trying to solve, initially with the advanced person that had moved down to Santa Cruz, and then later after they had purchased the business down there, we were actually able to say, hey, look, this is functionality that's included in what you're already paying for. Let us just take a little time and get it set up. And they were thrilled, absolutely thrilled. With the construction company, this is, they had some changing needs. They had some change in their staff, and we were able to, again, address it. We actually, with them, I believe that they're purchasing Anchor on an a la carte basis. But again, we had the right tool that enabled us to solve their problem very, very quickly. And then with the medical client, this is going through HIPAA compliance issues and whatnot. I'll tell you, I have a lot of compassion for any medical practitioner because they absolutely are being compelled to spend more money and be more aware of their IT infrastructure. And this allows us, while it is an upsell to the client, it allows us to bring a solution to them that is extremely competitive price-wise, and in my opinion, a very small amount of money gives them a huge amount of protection. And then for the winery client, again, long-term client, didn't really see the need to back up remote laptops. It unfortunately took an incident for them, and we were able to bring a solution to them very, very quickly and at a very, very competitive price. So I think that speaks to trying to get you there.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Zach. And I'm going to take this back over to Ted right now to talk to us about some of the other aspects of the solution.
Well, I think before we just go to formal Q&A, I just want to make some concluding remarks. I think the points Zach just made about the flexibility of the Anchor solution, I think is really quite impressive. I mean, the wide range of different client needs you can address with the technology is large, and the different ways you can bake this into how you price and package. And I think in Zach's case, in some clients, it was a value add under a managed service agreement. Other clients, they had an incident, so you had a very clear path to an upsell story, and everything in between. And that's what's, I think, really exciting about it. File server enablement is probably, in the managed service provider space, after multi-tenancy, is probably one of the most critical capabilities that critical reasons MSPs adopt Anchor. And so you've learned a lot about how that technology works today. Let's talk a little bit about just how to make money with Anchor. I think, in Zach's case, there were a handful of clients where this gets baked into the overall managed service offering, but when sold as a standalone offering, Zach, you've shared with us that you're able to make 60% recurring gross margins on Anchor.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's in the way that I position it, I believe is very competitive, and I really have had very little pushback from clients on the pricing of it, and I'll just share when we sell Anchor a la carte, we sell it for $20 a user, and we'll include the file server enablement. So if they've got, like in the case of the construction company, they've got 4 people at their main office. They've got a couple of remote people who are in the main office and also go remotely. We don't, we charge them just for the number of people that are actually using it, not the number of devices. It's just the number of people, and that means I guess the construction company is a great example because they don't have a file server, but there was I don't remember which other example was in there, but even for the managed clients, there's no extra license required to install it on a file server, so we don't charge them for that, and it works out very, very well. So I'm thrilled with those margins and how that enables us to serve the client need. It's really great.
Yeah, and I think the observation that we've seen in talking to hundreds of partners about how they sell and deploy Anchor, one of the great techniques is free trials. I think in each one of the examples you gave, you went in, you had a burning business problem where you had a good technology solution and you went in and you attacked that problem. For a lot of other clients, for a lot of other MSPs and their clients, sometimes you just have kind of like low levels of satisfaction with the level of collaboration in the organization, or people are dissatisfied with the VPN. And what we see happen is that free trials are a great way to drive awareness of how this technology works. And what you do is you go into a client, say a client may have, say, 25 employees, and you do a small pilot group of 5 employees, and you give it away for free. What you often find is those 5 people will not give it back because it really changes how you work. The levels of productivity, the confidence to run out to a business meeting with your iPhone and know that you've got all of your business content at your fingertips, even though there's that deal pending that you're working on with a colleague where you may need to open a document, review it, and send something back to them. That confidence is really empowering. And so once you get these free trials going, you have users that simply won't give it back. And you can charge a premium for this service. We recommend to partners to sell this as a managed service. Some MSPs, are very proactive about, say, taking certain aspects of their technology stack and making them standardized, like backup, like BDR, like sync and collaboration, and saying, look, every managed client I have will have this technology. There, you're not really line iteming things out and selling it as discrete units. On the other hand, there's many scenarios where this is a great add-on sale, where it's a la carte, where you can sell it at $20 per user per month. And the way we work is eFolder, we only go through channel partners. We work primarily with MSP-style channel partners. And what we do is we sell the Anchor service. Usually a typical partner will come on board with about 100 seats, and they will be able to get a wholesale price in the $5 to $7 per user per month range. And so the going rate is anywhere between $15 to $25 per month retail. That pricing is going to depend on your own sophistication, your own aggressiveness, and how much value you're adding, frankly, in terms of the deployment itself. Are you handling help desk? Are you doing security consultation? Are you handling all adds, moves, and changes? Are you providing monthly reporting on how the service is being used? All of that's going to drive how much you can charge for the service. And we recommend put in as many features and capabilities as you can and charge a premium, because we think that's the right way MSPs should be going to market today. You will occasionally have those really budget-constrained clients, but that's the good news is that the Anchor solution is nimble enough to go in and even handle those client needs. We want you guys to all get your hands on the technology. Any MSP can go to the anchorworks.com website and initiate a free trial of the service for 21 days. We have a team of product specialists standing by to do a live demo with you, a one-on-one demo and consultation to explore your additional questions. And you can just simply go to the eFolder website and let us know about that, and we'll probably be reaching out after today's webinar to see if you have interest in that. But with that, I think that kind of concludes our final comments here. And then, Jessica, I think we have a couple more minutes for questions.
Excellent, because we have a ton of them, Ted. And I'm going to hit as many of them as I can. Got a question from Wayne for Ted specifically, and the question is, I'm going to read it out. When will we have read-only access to files in TeamShares at the same time another user is editing the same file?
I believe that functionality is supported today.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you can open and have read-only access to a file that has file locking default set or has been invoked by the first editor of the file. The additional editor can get read-only access. So. Excellent.
Okay, I got another question coming in from Jackie, who asks. Jackie says, a lot of customers nowadays use NAS as their file server. Can this work with NAS?
Yes, you can. We support map drives with the Anchor service. Yes, you can sync NAS, a mapped drive, to the service.
Excellent. And let's see, another one coming in from Mike. Can this be used to sync data between two servers in different offices so that all users have local access to all their data?
Zach, I think that's one of the examples you gave. Is that's in fact what you did, right?
Yeah, we didn't. So we took subsets. We took subsets of folders from each server and synchronized it to the other site. So it's in this particular example, two different file servers, different domains, and synced the file, basically created two different team shares. So you have a team share on the server in Santa Rosa. You've got the local data. On the server in Santa Cruz, you've got a Santa Rosa server team share, and vice versa.
Yep, and then the other... Yeah, so that's in effect what I think answers that yes, you can do that, answers the question yes, and that's what Zach did in that one particular situation. You could be more aggressive and include more data. But the other capability with TeamShares is you can selectively sync based on the device. So you can have, for instance, a laptop computer that has access to certain TeamShares, but you can elect on a device-by-device basis to say, I don't want to sync locally all of this content. I want to give the user access on the web via the web interface to these TeamShares, but I don't want to sync them locally. And the reason is, oftentimes when we're dealing with syncing servers, you're dealing with massive amounts of data that would quickly swamp maybe a small storage-constrained laptop device.
No doubt.
I imagine, too, that's better in a mobile environment as well when you're worried about people losing their devices out in the field, too.
Well, I guess one thing that we got to make clear is that if you have devices that have lots of data synced to them, fat clients, laptop computers, Macs and Windows laptops that have a lot of data synced to them, you should be using full disk encryption via a third-party solution.
Right.
For those devices, because I mean, that is kind of the other, one of the beauties of Anchor, and we didn't really talk about it much today in today's webinar, is just how by eliminating consumer-grade sync solutions and putting in a business-grade sync product, you have tons more control over the data. You can remote wipe data, you can control what devices are allowed to be in the sync domain for a particular user, if you will. You can prohibit certain kinds of devices. You can highly restrict how collaboration works. You could say, look, this is a web-only team share, as an example. You get all those capabilities, but there is the other side of the coin, which is we are in a synced world here, right? And data is going to end up in more places, and so you want to make sure that you have, in addition, all the other security best practices in place on those mobile devices. In the case of laptops and fat client devices, you want full disk encryption, and with mobile devices, you want to make sure you have passwords set on the screens and all those sorts of things in addition, because you're now exposing potentially more data to more user error.
Right. Okay, makes sense. And I'm going to try to sneak in just a couple more questions. We're getting close to the top of the hour. But here's one coming in from Sean. Do you have to work with each file through the Sync Tool app? And what if a user is working on a file from a server through Windows Explorer? Will that hurt the sync?
I'll take that one, Ted. End users access files as they normally would. They don't use the file. They don't open the file through the Sync Tool app. If automatic file locking is turned on, when you open a file through Windows Explorer, you'll actually get a little pop-up from the app that says, do you want to lock it or not? But the main file access it's just normal. There's no difference from how you would normally work if you weren't using the app.
Okay. Another question coming in from Robert. He wants to know if this works cross-platform, i.e., can Mac users accessing Adobe Creative Suite files use this?
Ted, I'll take this one too, because this was actually the situation for our land surveying client. The advanced person that they sent down to Santa Cruz actually had a MacBook Air, and we installed the Sync client on it, and they weren't specifically using Creative Suite files, but there's no reason why it wouldn't work with any file. So we were syncing Word docs and spreadsheets and some other kind of stuff too. But yeah, that should work just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. And here's another one for Zach. How much space do you, Zach, include for your clients for the $20 per month per user?
Pretty much across the board. For every licensed user, I include 100 gigs of space, and that space is pooled across their organization. So, for example, for the land surveying company, they got 20 users, they've got 2 terabytes of space. And we have the flexibility to specify the amount of storage for the entire organization, and we can also specify the amount of storage that each user, or allocated to each user. So this is super flexible.
Okay, great. And one more quick question I'm going to sneak in. Is there a monthly minimum of users for Anchor?
Yes, it is 25. 25, but that's wholesale to you, the MSP. So you could split that between 25 one-person companies or one 25-person company. That's the low bar in the door. And I just would encourage people to think more expansively about the business opportunity in your client base, because if you can license more users, you're going to get a better wholesale price. So there's a little bit of a give-get there. But it's really, at the end of the day, it's very flexible, and our sales team is expert in dealing with the various and diverse needs of all different MSPs, depending on your size and your needs. So. Excellent.
Thanks for that. And that's about all the time we have for questions, I'm afraid. But if we didn't get to your question today, don't worry. We have them here, and either eFolder or Wooden Spoon will reach out to you with the answer after today's event. I'd like to thank both of our speakers from today. Thank you, Ted, and thanks, Zach.
It was great being here. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And thanks very much to our audience for joining us today for today's Channel Expert Hour. My name is Jessica Davis, and thanks for being here.